Hi everyone, Scott with Dearly Departed Tours. If you followed me for a while, you might know that I'm very fond of the actor James Dean. In one video, I did a pilgrimage to the giant filming locations in Marfa, Texas. In another, I read aloud a James Dean ghost story. But in this one, I had the opportunity to actually speak to James Dean's family. In particular, his cousin, Marcus Winslow. Marcus was close to Jimmy. He was only 9 years old when Jimmy died. He still lives in the family home where Jimmy spent most of his youth. When Jimmy was killed in 1955, the Winslow family acquired almost all of his possessions, and they still have them. There's never been a James Dean auction, though some items have become available, including the axle from the car he was killed in. We talk about that in the interview. Now, instead of being secretive and keeping everything to themselves, the Winslows are very generous with their time and by displaying most of the collection in the Fairmount Historic Museum. In fact, there are so many items, they rotate them. Marcus was so generous with his time and information, and to top it off, we were able to literally walk in James Dean's footsteps by visiting the barn where he left his footsteps in concrete. He didn't make it to the Chinese Theater forecourt, but he is still immortalized in the family barn. It's all in the video. I started by asking him about the fans who stop by the farm.
But that has to happen to you all the time, people coming by?
Well, yeah, we have a lot of people come by. Not too many comes in the house.
I would imagine.
But, yeah, there's a lot of people come in.
And you're usually really accommodating, aren't you?
Well, I try to be.
Is there a time where you just kind of go, no, I'm not doing this?
No, I've never turned anybody away.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm not available.
like working, like have a life, yeah. Well, it seems like you're Jimmy's. You mind if I call him Jimmy, because he's not my relative, you know. I didn't know him, but I feel like I did. And a lot of people probably say that to you. And so you're sort of his guardian, aren't you?
Yeah, sort of.
And a protector.
Yeah. Try.
Yeah. So when the day-to-day James Dean Enterprises, as it were, you know, there's a company that handles most of that stuff.
Yeah.
And
they're in Los Angeles and in Indianapolis. Used to be mostly Indianapolis, but they've got an office in LA now.
Mm-hmm. And do they run things by you?
Yeah. If there's something that they need to, they do. They try not to bother me any more than I need to be. Because they do a good job.
They don't commercialize them very much, you know.
Not as much as some of them probably.
Yeah.
But now probably 10 years ago there was a lot of commercialized stuff. That's just slowed down over the years.
Do you well, there was the famous one. There was the glasses, eyeglasses. Mm-hmm. And I think Converse shoes did one. Mm-hmm. And then there was something I showed Jordan yesterday.
Yeah, the investment one.
The one where they had, that was incredible.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can't not get goosebumps. You know, and he survives the spin out, you know,
That's been several years ago.
Yeah.
That was done.
And in the year 1955, he was 24 years old.
Yeah, every September, the weekend close to September 30th, I have a tour company in Hollywood.
Oh, do you?
I did until COVID.
Uh-huh.
And but we would take 15 people, and we went up the old road, not the main road, but we go up the old road to the place. We stopped at Blackwell's Corners, you know, and we would play clips at that time. And whenever, you know, we went to pay our respects, because we'd be there at the moment of the anniversary, and then we'd get back in the car and I'd play that. And it was always really kind of an emotional thing. But Jimmy touched a lot of people, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did.
And that's a real 24 years old to have accompanied all that.
Sure is.
So, you know, he was just a guy to you, though, wasn't he?
He was what?
He was just a guy, your cousin.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when it happened, you know, the two movies hadn't been out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, you got a cousin that's turned into almost like a saint to people.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's got to be strange.
Yeah, it was.
Did you foresee that in him? Like, because you must have looked at him like a brother. Did you ever foresee, like, everybody would think Jimmy was the greatest actor in the world?
No, never did. But he is. He really is. He's touched a lot of people's lives, just like he said.
I was telling Scott, I saw an interview with Dennis Hopper, and he said, when I went to New York City, I went there knowing I was the best actor. There was nobody better than me. And then I saw James Dean, and I realized that's the standard. That's the bar.
Yeah.
Because he said, I had to work at it. He was effortless at it.
Yeah.
He said he looked like he wasn't even trying.
Yeah. Well, he probably worked harder at it than he realized.
Can I ask you why, Scott, if you don't mind me asking? You told me once when I was here that going to see memorabilia for you is not something you would do in your own time, but you make everything available to the fans. Why do you do that instead of just having one auction and letting it all go?
Well, it means a lot to me personally because it was his, and I don't think I ever have sold anything.
That's great.
I've sold a few checks that he signed, but I've never sold any,
Any of his personal things.
personal things, yeah.
So I imagine you've got sort of I don't want to say network, but you got people that keep an eye out on things and they say, hey, here's this thing.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of fake stuff out there, stuff that, they say is
Occasionally,
his?
but not too often. Not years ago we did, but since CMG started keeping an eye on stuff, why, your bigger companies are familiar with licensing. It's just your little, what you want to say, people working out of their basement or something.
The eBayers.
Yeah, that doesn't realize or doesn't want to realize that they're supposed to get permission. But your bigger companies, they all know that they've got to get permission to do anything. And we don't have much trouble anymore. Years ago we did, back 30 years ago.
CMG seems pretty aggressive.
Yeah,
with protecting. They represent a lot of John Lennon and Marilyn, I think. So,
Do you still? Do you pursue items when they are auctioned, or do you just keep what the family inherited?
There's a few items that I've bought over the years. I don't get the flyers or whatever like I used to, and I'd find out about it when they'd had something for sale. Now, I don't think there's much for sale anymore.
Right.
There wasn't a lot in the first place, personal effects of his out there. And a lot of them that were I bought, like contracts and things like that. And, you can't buy everything.
Right. Well, you know that they recently sold or they said it's the axle.
Yeah.
What?
That's clear out of my reach.
Well, but
did you pursue it?
Or would you have
I kept
interest?
an eye on it, but it brought $382,000.
Well, now, if you were to get that, if you were to won that at an auction, what would you have done with it?
Put it in the museum.
Yeah. Oh, so you would? Because for some reason I thought either you're going to keep it private so it doesn't show up anywhere, or
No, I'd put it in the museum.
you're very generous to people by showing Jimmy's stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll try to be.
Because when I was here, the museum was like a room. There was, and I haven't been to downtown Fairmount yet, so I don't know. And you've got the gallery over there too, which is has a pretty high profile, and the Fairmount Museum doesn't have as much of a profile.
Well, I can tell you this: the Fairmount Museum, there's so much stuff in the cases. There's almost not room for anything else. Each triangle is covered with something. I guess.
Yeah, everything I've got's on display.
It's so cool.
And there's a lot of stuff. I've had a lot of people tell me that they've never seen that much stuff before from know that.
Is there ever a chance, say 30, 40 years down the line, is there a chance your house would become the James Dean Museum or something like that? Or do you want to pass it on to your family, or what's your...
I'll pass it on to my family. I've got one son that wants it, And, it's sort of like private property,
I agree. I just figure you have so many people out here. I mean, I've been out here a couple of times, and there's people showing up when I'm here.
Yeah.
So I figure you got people out here every day. I wonder if your son would go, I like it, but I want some privacy.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Like when the time comes and the next generation takes over, you think your son will be as protective as you are?
That's all they've ever known.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they won't sell anything. But
that would be your wish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might donate it to the museum or something. Which I might do that if depends on how things are.
I love that it brings people here, though. People that would never come to Fairmount maybe any other way, and
that's true.
They come here and then they love it. They love the small town. They love to get to walk where he walked and match up all the photos of him walking through town.
Yeah. Lee Raskin put some little plaques around town. Did you see those?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, those are kind of nice for fans to know where pictures were taken and so forth.
And he was everywhere. I mean, you said he would, when I had talked to you, you said he hung out everywhere. Every piece had like a piece of him up around town. So you don't get that anywhere else. Towns are changed and demolished and
Oh, yeah.
So cool.
Buildings get tore down and burnt down, one thing or another.
What do you think he'd think if he came back and saw all this?
Oh, I think he'd like it, really.
Yeah, kind of the hero worship thing.
Yeah.
He did like being the center of attention.
Yeah.
Because it really comes off in his movies that he was really kind of I don't know, he liked to poke people a bit, and it became pretty obvious in his movies. Did he tease you a lot, or your mom and dad?
He wasn't that way with us,
Yeah. Very respectful.
I never dreamed he'd be a movie star.
So,
Like he said, that all happened after he died except for East of Eden.
but he came back after East of Eden came out, didn't he?
No, it was right before it came out.
Okay, with Dennis Stock, and that's where those photographs were taken. And then after that, Rebel and all that sort of business. So was it your father that was in Hollywood and on their way back to Indiana when it happened, and his brother that was with him? It was an uncle, I thought.
It was my mom and dad.
Oh, both your mom and dad. Okay.
And then his uncle and aunt was in California visiting Jimmy's dad when Jimmy was killed. It was just a day or two before they were going to leave anyway. And of course, as soon as he was killed, they came right back home.
Oh, the story I always heard is they didn't know that he was killed until they got back home.
Well, my mom and dad didn't.
Okay.
I'm talking about his aunt and uncle.
I see.
They were there when he was killed, and they were staying with Jimmy's dad. And but my mom and dad had left a couple of days before to come back home.
I see.
And of course, it took about 5 days to drive back home. It took a little longer than it does today.
Yeah.
But I always remember Dad heard her on the radio.
Oh, he did hear it.
Well, he didn't hear it was Jimmy. He heard that some young upcoming actor had been killed in a car accident.
Oh boy.
And he just reached over and turned the radio off because he had a feeling it was Jimmy. But Mom didn't catch on to it. And so he didn't turn the TV or the radio on anymore and didn't buy newspapers or anything till they got home. Because he didn't want her to know it on the way home.
So by the time when Jimmy was killed, I know that he was sent back through Paso Robles, I believe. Was he here in Fairmount by the time your mom and dad got back?
No. They got back on a Sunday evening, I believe it was. And the funeral was the following Saturday, I believe. And his body got here about the middle of the week.
So they made the arrangements. I mean, it was up to them.
His dad did.
Okay.
His dad made the arrangements.
So he came back. His dad came back for that
sure.
because they weren't particularly close, were they?
Well, they weren't as distant as the books try to make it out. You know, he didn't live with his dad from the time he was 9 years old until he graduated from high school, went back to California, and he was in California for maybe a year, although he didn't live with his dad all the time. He was there for a short time. But they were beginning to get back together. Matter of fact, his dad was with him the day he was killed, not at the wreck, but they had went to Competition Motors, and Jimmy wanted to get his car fine-tuned, and the mechanic had changed the plugs in the car and did some stuff like that, and Jimmy's dad and Jimmy's dad's brother, who was there, who I was talking about.
Okay.
They both went to Competition Motors, and they went across the street to the, what was it they called that?
Farmers Ranch Market.
Yeah.
That's my neighborhood, or was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They went over there and got some coffee and some donuts, and of course Jimmy's dad told me, he said, as normal, Jimmy didn't bring any money with him.
It's on Dad.
So Uncle Wynn gave him some money. Well, I think around $35 at the time, which today don't sound like much, but back there in 1955, you know.
That's a couple $100.
Yeah. And Jimmy, of course, insisted on buying when they got over there. And when he was killed, they gave Uncle Wynn, you know, his billfold and stuff, and that's just what was left in the billfold, was just what change he got back from buying everybody's coffee and so forth.
Yeah.
Is that billfold or the wallet, is that in the museum?
No, I wish it was. No, I messed up on that. A guy called me one time and said he had Jimmy's wallet and wanted to know if I was interested in buying it, which I was. But to tell you the truth, I didn't really believe him. And I said, well, let me do some checking. Well, I went through some stuff that Uncle Winton had, and there was a note in there from Ethel, which was Winton's wife.
Yeah. Jimmy's stepmom, basically.
Yeah, stepmom. That, what was that guy's name? This guy had asked Uncle Winton and Ethel if he could have Jimmy's billfold, because he said they'd been friends for a short time. And matter of fact, he helped Uncle Winton clean out Jimmy's house. And I didn't think at the time that they would have given his billfold away, because they were very possessive and stuff. And well, anyway, but they did. They gave it to him, and then he ended up giving it to another guy years later, and then this guy wanted to sell it, and I didn't think that Uncle Winton's would have given away his billfold. And I went through these papers and found some notes that Ethel made that he'd asked for Jimmy's billfold, and by that time it was gone. And so I didn't get it. It went overseas somewhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did Jimmy ever go overseas? Did he have a passport?
No, not to my knowledge.
So
He never had time to do that kind of stuff. I mean, I think he would have.
Yeah.
But, you know, he just made 3 movies, just bang, 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 you know, and he didn't have time to do too much messing around. And
did you see a change in your parents after Jimmy died? Because you said they were so close that they even drove his motorcycle out to Los Angeles for him. I was just wondering if you saw any kind of change in their personalities.
Well, they were pretty broke up over it. Never really got over it. I don't think them or Uncle Winton's, either one ever got over it. You know, it was just such a shock. And of course, Jimmy was really beginning to go places, and he had struggled so for the short time that he tried, you know, and they really never got over it.
Have there ever been any claims of anyone saying that they believe they were Jimmy's son or something like that? Has any of that ever come out to be true or anything?
No. Some woman's calling me right now. She calls about every 3 or 4 days. Of course, I make it a point not to talk to her. And she claims her father-in-law was Jimmy's son, and I don't know where she comes up with that at, but I'm not interested in arguing the fact with her or anything.
Yeah, I just figured over these years you must have so many people that have come out and tried to con or just, you know.
And he's been an industry for some people that, you know, they say, I've read recently an interview with Mila Nurmi, Vampire. She came out and spent some time here after Jimmy's funeral, I guess.
Well, it was a couple months later.
Did you meet her?
Yeah.
Well, she seemed interesting. She actually seemed pretty okay.
She seemed okay at the time.
She didn't didn't say she did more than she did. You know, some people say, "Oh, I had an affair with the love of my life," and that sort of a thing. Because that Liz Sheridan says that, you know, and she wrote that book. Because they were together for a few months, weren't they?
Yeah, him and Liz Sheridan were pretty close, I think, in New York. And I don't think Mila Nurma's ever claimed that.
No, never.
I don't think anything like that happened with them. They were just acquaintances, you know.
And but I like that she called out people who overrepresented. She said, like Landau, you know, claimed to be best friends, didn't really care for him, you know, when he was alive, but became part of the legend. John Gilmore, who just straight up never met him, they say. And so, you know, he's become sort of that industry now.
As the story goes, James Dean was deeply in love with actress Pierre Angeli. Pierre's mother did not approve of James Dean and forced Pierre to let Dean go. Shortly thereafter, much to the surprise of James Dean, Pierre went on to marry singer Vic Damone. According to legend, Dean sat on his motorcycle across the street from the church during the ceremony. As he watched the couple emerge for the first time as husband and wife, he revved the engine loudly and sped off.
But do you think, though, that Pierre Angeli motorcycle across from the church when he got married, when she married?
I think that happened.
Do you?
I've been told by people that were there that it happened. I think he really cared a lot for Pierre Angeli. And at one time she cared a lot for him. But from what I understand, she's a Catholic and Jim is not. And her mother wanted her to marry a Catholic. And that was the main thing that broke him up.
The mother did it, I've heard that, So they think he was pretty devastated by that.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, for 24, he got a lot of living in.
He sure did.
That's, how soon after Jimmy passed away did he become, you know, did it happen like right away? Were people coming, you know, after Rebel Without a Cause came out, people were coming from all over the place to pay, you know, homage or whatever.
Yeah, it was right away.
Walk in his footsteps.
Yeah.
I
can remember on Sundays when there'd be cars parked along the road out here and you'd be in the house. I used to have kind of a place in the basement where I'd put models together and stuff, and you'd look out the windows and people would be walking by the windows, you know, and that got pretty old with me from as a child.
Did your mom and dad ever have to like call the police on people?
No, we never did have any trouble.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That says a lot about the fans, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never had any trouble. Now, one time, Mom, after Dad had died, she called and said there was somebody trying to get in the house. And so, of course, I come right over, and it was some woman who was drunk. And how big a fan she was, I don't know, but she was, getting hold of the doorknob and trying to get the doors open. And I don't think she meant any harm, really. She was just intoxicated. But we never did have anybody break in and steal anything.
That's what I would be the most afraid of.
Yeah.
That somebody would try and break into something.
I mean, it would be like I don't know if it is, but I've always, you hear rumors over the years that, if you were to see Jimmy's bedroom, it looks exactly the way it was when he died. And it'd be, to some people...
Well, yes and no. You see, after Jimmy left, when he got out of high school and went to California, then that became my room. And then that was my room for 13 or 14 years. And, to me, it was always my room, not Jimmy's room. But as soon as I moved out, why, it went back to being Jimmy.
Your folks?
Yeah. So, it does still have the same bedroom suite and everything, but we didn't make any special attempt to keep it just the way Jimmy had it. But it's not a big room. There's not too many changes you can make to it, And, it's still the same. But it's just the way it was,
That's so cool.
It is cool, and that's why it's still in my mind that your family had to deal with this guy that's become, but sometimes straight out they made him like Christ in that one scene with the gun in Giant. He's become that figure for so many people, and people claim to talk to him, and through psychics and all that business. I mean, you've probably heard a lot of those kind of stories. What's what are one of the weirdest stories? Do you remember any weird ones?
I don't know. There's so many things that happened over the years that I don't.
Jimmy's one of his tombstone was stolen, wasn't it?
2 or 3 times.
Was it?
Yeah.
And was it recovered?
Yeah. The original stone wasn't recovered for quite a while. And then it finally did show up, but by that time they bought a new one to replace it. And the one that's there now is a second stone.
And you have the first one?
Yeah, I've got
Okay, so you saved it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Part of the archives, yeah. And they're not archives, they're just your cousin's things, aren't they? Kind of.
I've never done anything with it. It's in the basement of the house, but I didn't know if it was appropriate to show it or not.
I mean, personally, I think so. I think that's part of Jimmy's story. I mean, like you said, he'd probably love the attention that he had to get a second headstone, you know what I mean?
And he had that kind of, he liked to
you had to move his bust to a different place in town because people wanted, he would probably love that.
Yeah, probably.
He kind of liked the macabre a little bit, hopping in the casket and stuff like that. He wasn't precious about stuff. Wasn't afraid of stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people might be. But and then so when his funeral took place, and that's just over in the church over here, were there special circumstances? Like, did you have to have someone stay there overnight just to make sure everything?
The church?
Yeah.
No. See, the funeral home's right there in Fairmount, and the body was at the funeral home until they took it to the church for the funeral.
I see.
So the undertaker was,
Family friend?
Pardon?
Were they family friends?
Yeah, Hunt's was the name of it at the time. Hunt's funeral home. Now it's called Arms Hunt. Someone else.
Oh, it's still a funeral home?
Oh, yeah. It's on South Main Street there in Fairmount. Beautiful house.
And the ceremony, you were there. I mean, you were there. Of course you were there. And then afterward, were there any of those Hollywood types that came out here for that?
Not too many.
Were there a lot of fans for that?
Oh yeah, it was very crowded.
That's really interesting.
Big deal for Fairmount.
That's really, and I mean,
3,000 people they claimed.
what's that? I'm sorry?
3,000.
That many people for the funeral, and he wasn't as famous yet. That's what's so interesting. I mean, he I guess when he died, he became something very different, and that's so fascinating to me. And then they brought him from the church here to did they have a graveside thing?
Yeah, they from the church to the group cemetery. Yeah.
And there's people at all hours of the day going over there.
Oh yeah.
And pretty respectful people.
Pretty much. There's some of them have chipped pieces off the stone and so forth, but overall they've been pretty respectful.
Did you guys have to do anything like I hear sometimes they put people in cement to make sure nobody comes and tries to do anything? You didn't have to do anything crazy like that?
No, never have.
Has anyone ever tried something crazy like that?
No.
That's just, yeah. It's
we were talking about Robert Wadlow, the world's largest man. His family was worried that someone would try and...
Who?
Robert Wadlow, the world's largest man.
He was 8'11" and 22 years old when he died. But it's happened a lot. George Pullman from the Pullman Car Company, his company was on strike, so they were worried that someone might try something, so they put him in a case of concrete just to make sure nobody...
Well, not a bad idea.
Yeah. We were talking yesterday. Have you ever considered how they're CGI wanting to put old celebrities in new movies and things like that? Have they ever approached you about anything like that? Or
Yeah, I don't know if it's what you're talking about or not, but they've got a process now where they can take a person and somehow they make the film look like it's
Like their face.
Yeah. And they're talking about doing that.
Would you be supportive of something like that, or
if it's in good taste? To start with, I wasn't supportive of it, but the more I was talked to about it and so forth, I finally come around. And if it's done right, well, I'll be in favor of it.
So you get approval of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to CMG, do they, like, I know that you said they don't really come to you for a whole lot, but would they if it was something bigger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now a regular movie like East of Eden or something, we have nothing to do with that. That's all through Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, if it's reshown or something, we don't get any of that.
But they couldn't do Return to East of Eden without your permission. With Jimmy and a whole, same what happened to Cal, 50 years later.
Yeah, I think they could.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have much approval over movies or books. Books can be written and we don't have any say so.
Really? What kind of book? I mean, how can, like, if somebody like Mylon Ermey or John Gilmore writes a book, they didn't get stopped, but they could have got stopped?
No.
So books are fair game.
Fair game from what I understand.
It just can't be called the official.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you ever thought about writing your own book about your experiences?
A friend of mine has written a book, sort of my life, but it's more of my life with James Dean. My life would be pretty boring to most people. And
I'd love to read that. I'd love to read that book though, because you had 9 years of your developmental years of your life with him. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, Leith Adams is his name. He was he was in charge of the museum at Warner Brothers for several years. Really nice guy. And I wouldn't have went along with it with just anybody, but I knew that he'd be very truthful. And so it should be out probably this winter sometime.
Oh, nice.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I saw Jimmy's.
But I don't look for it to be a big success or anything. It's just a small deal.
But the museum, it'd be a fantastic addition to have at the museum available to people.
You're going to have to sign a lot of autographs on James Dean days.
But your life's hardly boring. You got an amazing collection here. This
thank you.
I think it's spectacular. And this was a real family car.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Were all of these family cars or some collected?
Just that car.
Yeah.
Is that the original Carter Motors sign from when Jimmy used to hang out? Where he got his, that's so cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, Mrs. Carter, we haven't never meant anything to her. And
Wow.
one day this person in Fairmount said to me, said, what happened to the signs on the motorcycle shop? I said, I don't know. They said, well, it's gone. And I said, I have no idea. I said, I didn't even notice it was gone. And so when I come back by, well, sure enough, it was gone. And then I kicked myself, and I thought, well, I never dreamed that Mildred would sell that sign. And I think the next day, the lady across the road had a Massey Ferguson tractor, small one, that there was something wrong with it. She wanted to know if I'd stop and look at it. And I said, what happened to the Indian sign? Oh, she said the wind blew it off the building. She said, Mildred and I drug it around back behind the garage there. And I said, what? Is she going to put it back up? She said, I don't know. I said, I don't imagine. And I said, well, I'd like to have that. And so she told Mildred, and Mildred called me that night and said, you want that Indian sign? I said, yeah, if you're going to get rid of it. And so I got it, and I put it up there, and then I drew a pattern off of it and had another made and put on.
That's the one that's up there now? That's great. Now that's safe, because you know somebody will grab it at some point.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Wow.
So I thought it was, it's kind of part of history to me. It's part of my life.
Yeah.
Did you have bikes when you were growing up?
No.
No.
Had a bicycle. I couldn't afford a bike and a car both, so I chose a car. But Jimmy liked bikes. He never had a car when he was there.
Was that his only car, the Porsche?
He'd had an MG right before the Porsche, and then his uncle or his dad bought him an old Chevy when he moved back to California. I've never seen it, never paid, as far as I know, there's no pictures of it. I don't know, the 40 or 41 Chevy, I don't know. But anyway, the Porsche Speedster and then the Spider was really the main car that Jimmy had.
Now, what do you think really happened to that car? Somebody just get insurance for it and destroy it, or?
I think George Barris had something done with it.
I've heard that. And all he did was paint Little Bastard on it, wasn't it?
He didn't even do that.
No?
He took credit for it,
Yeah, he did.
but he didn't do it. There was a guy that had a shop right there beside Barris's, and he was a sign painter. And Jimmy got acquainted with him, and he painted the numbers on the car and the Little Bastard on the back. And of course, Barris jumped right on that.
He's good. He was a showman. He was a showman. Like Zach, who got Jimmy's piece of that car. You know, he's like a new Barnum. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, you know, Barris was, I know he exaggerated himself. I mean, he did some significant things.
He did, yeah.
But he also had there's plenty of those copies of that Porsche, but he had a copy of Jimmy's registration with it too, which made it look more legitimate too. You obviously, you know, the family, you own the James Dean name, the signature. Do you, I mean, the copyright on the trademark on the actual signature. Do you guys, is the 130 part of all that?
No.
That's just sort of. I just wonder what of the trademarks that are enforced.
Or the Little Bastard.
Yeah.
No. We thought about it, but yeah, if somebody wants to do that, we'll let them do it. You know.
So you're pretty free about stuff too. You let people
paying tribute to Jimmy when they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it like to see somebody show up with like James Dean tattooed on their body? What do you think? Do you get like?
Did I say, do you want to get a reaction now?
No, I'm just curious. What is on? Because I know some people have his signature on their neck, and they do all this. You know, it's got to be really something for you to just take a step back every once in a while and go, "What the hell?" You know, this is my cousin. This is just a guy.
I figure if they think that much of him, why they want to do that, why go for it.
So you're a, don't take this wrong, but you're a small town guy. You love being a small time guy. You got your farm, you got, your equipment, you collect your things. But this has pulled you into a whole different world. Yet you're still got your home and this is where you are. Yeah. But you've got, it's against your will, or I should say, just your lot. It's just where it pulled you. And that's got to be one of the most strangest things to have to live through. To be 9 and all of a sudden go. Because Jimmy wasn't, when he passed away to you, he was still Jimmy. And he probably still is. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? It just, like I mentioned it before, elevated him.
Quite honestly, with all the stuff you have, if you cared about money, you're sitting on millions of dollars worth of his memorabilia. When checks go for thousands of dollars, you could have very easily been one of the people that just sold out everything and say, hey, we want the fans to have it, but really, you're going to have, a great retirement, but you keep it all together for fans.
Yeah, I kind of like you say, I like to keep it all together for the fans. And, most fans are poor. They haven't got a lot of money. And I kind of like for them to be able to see it. And
it's inspiring to see what a kid from a small farm town could do in just 24 short years, leave a mark the way that he did.
It's really amazing.
Very, very amazing.
I don't think it'll ever happen again.
Do you think, a lot of people do think he was speeding? We know he got the speeding ticket, but a lot of people think, I know it's not a blame thing because it was an accident. We know it was an accident that turnip seed ultimately did make an illegal turn.
He did. He turned right in front of him.
And Jimmy was probably not going that fast, I wouldn't think, because he just got the ticket. That's my thought. But people do, people do say, no, Jimmy was going 100. It's like, nah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
But Jordan and I really recently went to Marfa. I'd never been before, so we found Jimmy's room and at the hotel. But I got to go up to the windmill out in the field, and that was something else.
Yeah, it was. That's pretty kind of neat that it's still there.
They're nice about it. It's on private property, and we gave them a call, and they said, "Yeah, sure, just watch out for snakes." Right. So it was really something to be there and to see them. It's so great. Yeah. It really is a real honor to be here and be able to talk to you face to face. I've wanted to do this for years, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Is this what you do?
Yeah, I do videos now. Yeah, that's what I do now.
Do you?
Yeah, there's a term that I don't know if I made it up, but people, I call them accidental icons. People that ended up really being famous unintentionally because of however, the woman I interviewed fairly recently was the girlfriend of the kid that was driving the car that Jay Mansfield was killed in. So she became a really important person unintentionally, and she's got great stories about, not great, but interesting stories that would be lost to history. Yeah. And you make sure that Jimmy's not lost to history. You're kind and generous to his fans. Unbelievably generous to his fans, and that's so it's important. You never forget. That's the thing. You keep people alive, and that's why cemeteries are important to me. And because you make your mark. Jimmy made more of a mark than most people. But it's important that everybody's got stories, and it's just fascinating the situation that you ended up in unintentionally, but you've embraced it, and a lot of people would really resent that.
I think that car still exists that James Mansfield was killed in.
It does. I own it.
Oh, you own it?
Yeah. Because to me, it's it's history. People. That's like the Porsche. It'd be interesting to me. It's not a part of history that's good, but I always tell people it's like I spoke to her son who was in the car before I put it. I had a museum in Hollywood.
He was in the back seat, wasn't he?
Yeah, her and brother and the three kids. Mm-hmm. And before I put it out, because I had a museum, and I went to introduce myself and explain what I was doing, and he says, "Well, if you're looking for my blessings, you're not going to get it. However, I'm glad you came," and we shook hands, and it was a friendly exchange. Mm-hmm. But I explained to him this is like Dealey Plaza to some people. Mm-hmm. It's important to people.
Last conversations were had, last thoughts, moments.
And Jane Mansfield, even her own daughter, not Mariska, but the other one, says you may not be able to name a movie, but you sure know who she was. Yeah. And that's sort of, to me it's important that to not be forgot. Maybe it's not the way they intended to be remembered, because sometimes, like, what do you think if Jimmy hadn't been killed in that accident? Do you think he'd be the person that he is? I mean,
I've wondered that a million times.
Yeah. He may have lost interest in acting 2 years later and went into something you just never know with him. Yeah. So many interests.
Yeah.
The Buick, wasn't it?
Yeah, 66. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't run. Of course, it doesn't run. It was went head on into the back of a semi, but you know what those things are built like. Oh. So the interior of the car, fine, but the like the hood of it, it's almost like a perfect, where it hit, and it sheared off the top of the car. Mm-hmm. So it's, but the car, you open up the trunk, still the trunk, and
oil?
Yeah, it still leaks oil. 50 was 1967. So, yeah, it's a strange artifact, but it is Hollywood history. And I'm not going to lie, that's part of the reason I got attracted to Jimmy in the first place. Mm-hmm. Then I got to learn more about the person and the movies, but it was always something I always gravitated towards, stories like that. Mm-hmm. So then that's when I, went up to the town, and now I go, like I said, we went to Marfa. It's not just about that, but it's part of that is part of the magic or the mystique of it. Well, you know this already, that, competition's gone, and they just about 2 years ago tore down that gas station.
Yeah.
That
I felt kind of bad when they tore down the competition motors.
Yeah.
Because Jimmy had so much enjoyment from buying his Speedster there and then buying the Spider and hanging around.
It was nice I got to walk through it and take some pictures, and you felt like there was a connection there. I don't know, this is a weird thing. I don't know if you're interested. Would you want a brick or something from there?
Yeah, if you got some.
Yeah, sure. And I got pieces of the gas station too, where the pump was, where Jimmy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll be happy to send them to you. Yeah. They're not big, but it's just a memento,
Sure.
How many pieces of the car do you think exist really? You must.
I don't know.
That you know of.
I only know one or two pieces.
Does that place in Chicago have? Is that a real piece of it that they have in the suburbs of Chicago?
I don't know.
There's an auto museum out there that says they have a piece of the door or something.
That's George Barris claimed that that's the door off of Jimmy.
He was probably selling pieces of it.
So I doubt it. I doubt it.
Do you think so? I mean, do you think it's gone? Just destroyed?
I can't imagine if it still exists and had showed up by now. But you never know. Someone might come forward with it someday.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you have it and you're all by yourself, it's not, you want to share it with people, So you sit in a room all by yourself with this amazing
I would think the
artifact.
number or something like that, something identifiable, somebody would have kept. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard that George Barris had the car put up on top of his business building, and it was up there for a long time where nobody could see it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I'd never heard that. That's interesting.
And then it disappeared. And I've some people think that George collected insurance money from it when it disappeared.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Know whether he did, I have no idea. I don't even know for sure if it was on top of the building,
But it was in his possession.
The story I always heard was that it was on its way to a car show or something, and it disappeared in transport.
yeah, that's what George said.
Yeah, it disappeared. All of a sudden, one day, they open up the car and it's gone out.
Buried underground.
That for 1 second, do I believe that? But because he wasn't a dumb guy. No. He was, which is why I think that wouldn't surprise me if someone did have that. Yeah. But I thought more pieces of it would be floating around if that was the case.
So. And there wasn't much left. He put sheet metal on the side of it and so forth when he displayed it, or when Highway Patrol displayed it. It didn't even look like the same car. Now, I'm sure there's parts on it people would love to have had, memorabilia. But at that time, back in 1960, when it disappeared, his popularity was kind of waning, and I don't think anybody dreamed at the time it'd ever be worth anything. And if they did, George would have kept it.
Yeah. Has your family ever been, has a Turnip Seed ever tried to reach out to any of you guys? To your family?
Who?
Donald Turnip Seed?
Oh, no. Turnip Seeds, from what I understand, get mad if you mention it.
Yeah, but
somebody was telling me that they knew someone that worked at a Mercedes-Benz dealership, and apparently Turnip Seed had bought a car there. This was within the past 20 or 30 years, and they asked him, they said, "Well, are you the guy that was in the accident with James Dean?" And he said, "You ever mention that again, and I'll never come in here again." And that was the end of it.
He must have had a serious monkey on his back that he probably nightmares constantly from it, I'm sure.
It was fascinating to me because he had this terrible thing happened.
You would think,
and they made him walk home or hitchhike home, from that terrible thing that he had just. That's for an 18-year-old kid, or however, I think he was 18. What a burden that was to start with, just to start with. But he never changed his name. And that's interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So fascinating. But
that road used to curve right there, and he went around that curve, and that's where he hit Jimmy. But somebody told me that they didn't know, but they just imagined that he took that road quite often, going to Bakersfield. Probably drove as fast as he could around that curve, and that's what he was doing when Jimmy and him come together.
The car would have been easy to miss.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'd always heard that when Jimmy was a kid, he put his foot and handprint in wet cement in the barn. I finally worked up the nerve to ask Marcus if I could see it.
Wow, this has been great. Do you think I could go see Jimmy's handprints?
Sure.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
So Jordan and I walked to the barn. We opened the first barn and we found the basketball hoop that he, as in Marcus, and Jimmy were playing with when Dennis Stock took the photograph. Then we went to a different barn and found the footprints.
All right, hold your shit, Scott. Hold your shit. It's right here. Right there where that crack is.
Wow, his feet and his hands.
Jim Dean.
Look at that.
He said, "I thought of having the cracks replaced," but I said, "Don't."
Yeah. No handprints at the Chinese theater. This is pretty awesome. And no, as tempting as that is, I would never in a million years. He is so kind and so generous to us. Jimmy's little feet. It's really cool. I'm so glad he's just got everything, the right idea about everything.
This hood would look nice in your museum, Scott.
It was really cool to be actually put my hand and footprint in Jimmy's hand and footprint. A total geek moment that I will remember and cherish. And thanks for Jordan for making it happen. And thank you to all of you for your time and for your attention. And especially Marcus. Thank you so much, Marcus. Thank you.
You heard me.